Good afternoon. It's October 9th, 2011. We're here at the Seattle Antiquarian Book Fair. My name is Taylor Bowie, and I'm speaking with Fran Durako, who is the proprietor of the Kelmscott Bookshop in Baltimore, Maryland, who I believe is out here for her first Seattle Book Fair.
Actually, it's my second.
Second, great.
Well, yeah, it's a great fair.
Welcome back. That's right, now I do remember.
Yeah.
I'll correct myself.
Okay, I'm going to just...
Good. If I make any mistakes, you correct me. Oh, good. Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
Well, let's start just to talk a little bit about your background. Where were you born and raised, and your family and your early education?
Okay. I was born in Presque Isle, Maine, and didn't stay there long, and ended up growing up most of my childhood and teenage years in South Bend, Indiana. Went to... in terms of education, I went to Indiana University as an undergrad, and then I also have a master's in library science from Indiana University. So started my career as a librarian. In fact, I became a law librarian, and that's where it all started.
Did you grow up in a bookish sort of household in any way?
It was a household. Neither of my parents was particularly well educated, but books were their passion, and they encouraged books and reading. In fact, I could read before I went to kindergarten, and they were very supportive of that. So books were... I remember my father would take me to the South Bend Public Library, and I would go in and come out with 15 to 17 books, and he'd come pick me up, and then a week or two later, so it was very highly encouraged.
That's great. You had brothers and sisters
I had
also?
one brother, younger brother, who did not go the book path.
No.
He went the art path, actually.
Well, that's another good path. So you got the librarian degree from Indiana University.
I did.
And tell us about the law library you went to work for.
At the time I was finishing my degree, it was clear that staying in Indiana during a recession was not going to be where we would find jobs. So we decided to move to the D.C. area where more libraries per capita, I think, than anywhere. Certainly more attorneys per capita in terms of a law library.
So you and your family? Or
my husband. I'm sorry, I beg your pardon.
That's
yeah,
right.
I was married by then.
Uh-huh.
And so we moved out to D.C., and I had a first job at a law firm, and then ended up at the law firm I worked at for 23 years.
Really?
And it went from a 40-attorney firm to a 400-attorney firm. And I started as the library director, but about 10 years in, they asked me to take over the technology, like running the computer department, and et cetera, et cetera.
In addition to your library? Oh, my gosh.
So by the end, I was the chief information officer in charge of all the technology and research and conflicts of interest and litigation support. And but boy, I was so ready to leave. It was very, very high pressure.
It sounds. And how big did the firm become?
About 400 lawyers and
10 times the size when you joined.
Yes, and with a support staff of like another 800 people. So it was demanding. It paid well, but my husband reminds me when I say I wish I'd gotten out sooner. He's like, that's what bought your business.
Yeah, well, that is a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting thing to hear about the evolution of the role of the law librarian.
Or librarians in general.
In general, it reflects.
It does the impact of technology and information dissemination and all of that.
Yeah,
so
even your final job title, you see that in all sorts of libraries.
Right,
too.
right. So,
including the few of them that don't want to have books anymore. But I take it your law library had books.
You betcha.
Yeah, I bet.
Lots of them. Yeah, we had a library. I was trying 50, 80,000. I can't remember because you have the huge sets of law reporters and all.
Statutes.
Exactly.
What was the emphasis of the firm? Did it have a focus?
It was litigation, heavy litigation, civil litigation, and with other practices in intellectual property and energy regulation. So anyway, so there I was, 21st and L, Washington, D.C. for all those years.
Right in the heart of it all there. Yeah. Somewhere along the line while you were working there, you must have had some idea first gave you that idea, the glimmer of the thought, maybe someday I'd like to be in the trade?
That's an interesting question, Taylor. I was a collector of sorts. I was never a rigorous, serious collector. It was more somebody at the Colorado Book Seminar said there are the completists and the comprehensive, and then the romantics who I like William Morris, so I want 5 books by William.
Yeah, you don't want 55 books.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I was more of that kind.
That was always my approach.
You too? Yeah. Eclectic, many interests. But somewhere along the line, I started subscribing to A.B. Woodman's Weekly, and then I ultimately did attend the Colorado Book Seminar in 1988.
Now, this is obviously you were still.
Oh yeah, I never left the law, but I thought I really want to get into the book business, and I went to that, and I was so psyched. I mean, there were people like Mike Ginsberg and Glaser, and all sorts of Richard Weatherford before he became a Libris, and
before he became my business partner for a while too.
Yeah. So all that, and you came back really psyched, and then I got home and I thought, well, now what do I do? This was pre-internet. I said, how do I get the books?
Yeah.
How do I get the people to sell the books to? And I just sort of spun my wheels and then focused on my library career, but stayed interested. And if you want to move into how the transition occurred, I had been among the places I purchased books from was Kelmscott Bookshop in Baltimore, and had for years. And I ran into the then owners, Terry and Don Johanson, whom I'm sure you know, at a book fair actually. And they said in the conversation they were really getting tired of running a day-to-day bookshop, and they were thinking of decreasing their hours. They said, we might even sell it. And that was August, and then January 3rd, I bought it.
Of which year?
2003. So I should mention that, yeah.
Had you left the law library then?
As soon as it was clear I was buying the shop,
Signed the papers.
as soon as the papers were signed, I gave my notice. And boy, did that feel good.
I can imagine it did.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's what happened. And then you've been in the business so long, this wouldn't resonate with you, but so I bought the shop and had an agreement that Terry and Don would mentor. Wanted to talk about mentors and advise. And I thought, I don't know what I'm doing. Here I ran this department and this big, and now I have this shop, and I don't know what to do. People come in to sell books. It's like, it was just a whole.
If someone comes in with the question of a point of law, you can immediately find it for them.
Absolutely. I did complex business and legal research, but this was and then of course there was the whole shock of, where's the mail room? Who's going to deliver the mail? It's like, that's you.
Yeah, that's right.
So there was a transition.
Who's going to sweep the floor? And
that's
all that
me.
stuff.
Don't even ask about the toilet. Small open shop.
So did they keep in touch with you? Did they come into the shop to kind of help out?
More than that. As part of the contract agreement, I gave them back an office in the building. It was supposed to be a 5-year period for the benefit of consulting and et cetera. And they're still there.
Oh, well, that's nice.
So it's worked out nicely.
That's good. What do they do?
They do business as Johanson Books, and
okay.
maybe they've heard that, but they're much more focused. Their love is early printed books, and so they try to do as much of that as possible. And they have a newfound flexibility. They have 3 children in 3 different locations around the country. Each has a grandchild, so they spend a lot of time.
Oh, that sounds. And then they can do a little book scouting.
They don't believe me. Yeah, and they still do the New York and California fairs.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, I hope maybe to see them next February.
Yeah, you will. You will. Yeah.
When you bought the business and the inventory
and the building.
And the building too. Okay. Describe the building. for us?
This is in an old section of Baltimore, row houses. And it's a row house. It's like, 4 stories, including the basement, filled chock-a-block full with books. And
is this kind of old row house? I've seen pictures of it, the marble steps.
oh, not nearly so nice.
Oh.
But yeah,
That
it's an 1890s building, and very high maintenance. But it's a destination store. It's not a walk-by touristy kind of casual visitor kind of place. And
I'm curious. I've never asked this before of anybody. Is the door locked? I mean, you have to ring to get in.
yeah, I call it an urban area because it is. And you'd never worry you still have to ring to come in. And Royal Books, Kevin Johnson, is right next door.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, how great.
Yeah. In fact, we have a door that we can walk back and forth.
That is wonderful.
It is nice.
No idea that.
Yeah.
But that's in a different building?
It's a different building, but they share a wall.
Oh, that is great.
Yeah.
Wow.
So and it's nice because he does totally different.
Absolutely.
So, but it's nice. But they keep their door locked too. That was me. It's just you do.
No, I don't understand that.
Yeah.
Well, you have a 4-story row house full of books. How would you describe your general inventory?
General inventory. When I bought the shop, it probably still has about 20,000 books in every conceivable subject, every price from $5 to and.
So, in other words, what we see that you bring to a book fair would not necessarily reflect the whole inventory. It's much more general in the very select
exactly
things.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And this is getting into part of talking about the book trade, etc. And the internet. But it's clear. It was clear after a very short time that to really thrive and to move up and forward, one had to specialize and one had to try to handle higher-end books.
Yeah.
And so that's been my effort. But we still have an open bookshop, and all these books.
Do you continue to buy
Only
the general stuff?
for the general, always selectively certain areas that we know will sell pretty well.
What would some of those be?
Well, Marylandia and Baltimoreana, which I personally have less than no interest in. But there it is. And military history. It's just, it's weird.
There's always been a lot of that around the D.C. area, military history.
Yeah, and it sells. So, but otherwise, I buy as little as possible for the general stuff. But I have a shop manager and another assistant, and it's sort of a little bit of a tension because they're dealing with the day-to-day bookshop, and they want new stuff. So.
Yeah, they want something to ensure. I can understand that.
Yeah, I do too. I'm there usually 4 days a week because I have a 70-mile round-trip commute from where I live.
Where do you live?
Right outside of Washington.
Oh, right, that's
yeah.
right. You said
So,
that. So that is.
so it's like 35 miles each way. So I don't get there. Usually don't get there 5 days a week, but they are there. So they.
Good for them. What was their background in the trade? Did they work for others, or just?
Yeah, both started with me, and
That's good.
my manager Susanna has been with me almost 8 years. I've been there 9 years, and I couldn't do it without her. I don't think. In fact, visiting my daughter here, and I was talking about Susanna and what she does, and my daughter finally said, "Well, what do you do?" And well, I pay the bills,
Yeah. And you do the book fairs.
We do the book fairs, yeah.
That's right. With this general inventory, is much of it listed online? It is. Okay.
Yeah.
How do you just roughly estimate the percentage of online sales versus through the door sales?
Certainly the online sales are greater. Trying to come up with percentage because we sell books through print catalogs, through the book fairs, through the internet, and then through the shop. And I wouldn't say more than 20% sells directly from the shop.
Right.
majority online, and the rest from the catalogs actually do very well.
Are your catalogs general or specific?
They're specific to the areas that we like to sell. I'm to the extent I can. I specialize in private press, artist books, William Morris, and the Pre-Raphaelites, and the other early, the Doves, Action Dean, etc., and then Victorian art and literature of the second half of the 19th century.
A lot of dealers have drifted away from issuing catalogs and lists, but more and more, talking to the ones who continue to do them, I hear good things about them. You get a good response?
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
I think the fact there are fewer of them now, those who want catalogs are much more receptive to them, grateful to get them.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right, and it gets your name out there in ways that, in a way that otherwise you don't, especially when you're trying to reach the institutions.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's the way to build a reputation or a relationship with them. I agree.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad you think so. Again, being a lot of people in my demographics have been in the business much longer than I have, so it's still a building process for me to make those relationships happen.
Well, frankly, though, you have the advantage coming in, later on of not having all this kind of book trade baggage, where you think, well, this is the way we've always done this, so you have to do it, and that's a plus, absolutely. I mean, knowing what you went through in your 23 years in the law library, dealing with serious change, so tweaking in the book trade is not going to bother you, I wouldn't think.
Not nearly as much, but I admire so many people who've been doing it for so long. I mean, you talked again about mentors, and there's just so many people who've just been very free and generous with their advice.
Who are some of them?
Tom Congleton, Kevin Johnson, and Sarah Baldwin. People, John Thompson. People are just always happy to talk to you about, what they do, what you do, and what works and what doesn't, and refer you. I've been very impressed with the collegial nature of the trade,
it is
even
extraordinary.
to newbies.
Yeah, it really is. I don't think people. I'll often hear people say, "Oh, well, I went over to your competitor the other day," and I'll say, "Well, no, we don't have competitors. We have colleagues in this business." They think it's like the antique business or the art business or something.
Cut your throat.
Cut your throat for $50.
Yeah,
that's right.
No, it's been a really great experience that way.
So you would, given you came to the trade when you did, the internet has been a plus for you in the trade. That was kind of the point I was making. There was no question of getting used to it.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. I think the thing that hit me pretty soon after that, I'm sure everybody else already knew, which is that it cuts both ways. Yeah. And those $50 books are now $10 books.
The $10 books are now. Ooh.
Yeah. One of the books $1 million or something. But on the other hand, if you have something that meets all the criteria of rare, desirable, you can reach out in a way. I mean, I never thought I'd be selling books to people in Japan,
Well, I remember the first time I was somebody in Turkey.
What?
How's this possible?
Yeah, I know.
You put it in a box, you put stamps on it, and someone gets there. Tell us a little bit about a recent retail development in the trade, which has been very encouraging to a lot of people. This bookseller co-op, which I guess was kind of co-founded by Bob Fleck and Tom Congleton.
Yes. It was an interesting idea. Bob called me a couple of years ago, Bob being the owner of the Oak Knoll Book Press.
Robert Fleck,
Bob Fleck, former president, former ILAC president. I always call people luminaries, but he is one. And he has a building in Newcastle, Delaware, which is a cute little touristy town. And
it's a little old school or something?
It's actually an opera hall.
Okay.
Yeah, opera house. And had the idea of taking the second floor, which for him is was underutilized and making it a cooperative. So he had contacted Tom Coppleton of Between the Covers, who's more than a luminary, and then Doug, I'm sorry, his last name escapes me right now, from the old bookshop in Bordentown. And it seemed like a neat idea. It's a huge space on the second floor of the building, which we sort of divided up. And again, what we do is, there's overlap, but on the other hand, a lot of what we do is, complementary, not competitive, if you will.
Sure.
And so we had a nice opening reception. It was gala.
I saw some pictures of it.
Yeah.
It looked like a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun.
How is it managed and staffed? Do you have to put in time there yourself ever? Or
No, as part of the agreement, his staff it, and it can get a little logistically complicated sometimes, because we have in our database which books are in Delaware, and we get an order, and then we have to contact his staff, and they have to find it, and so it can get a little. But all in all, it's been fine.
How many books do you have there?
Probably 2,000. Tom has many more, and Bob does too. But Tom has a stock of about 200,000 books.
Tom has a lot of books.
He has a lot
Talk
of
about
books.
a wide price range too.
Yeah, $5, 500,000.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, but it's been fine. It's not been. The walk-in is not exactly as great as we would have hoped, because we thought with it being a nice tourist location, but you're not going to get serious buyers. But on the other hand, I didn't put a lot of serious books.
That's tough. And tough to predict ahead of time,
was.
and it could just be a question of letting it shake out over.
That's what we're trying to figure out. We're trying to have more events, exhibits, book signings, etc., and seeing where that takes us.
Yeah. Did I understand right that some of the books you have there that you also have listed on your regular inventory?
Oh, we do.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we didn't pull them off because it's the unpredictability of who's going to buy when.
Right.
So that's where it gets a little
That's
complicated.
right. Well, you're one of the few people I've talked to not only as a retail shop, but actually two kinds of retail shops.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the future of the trade. I mean, every time there's been any change in the book trade, there are always a lot of gloom and doomers who come out and say, well, that's the end of X, whatever they're talking about. That's the end of the book, that's the end of the shop, that's the end of this, that's the end of that. For the future of the trade, do you see a continuing role for the open bookshop?
That's a good question. I hope so, and I think it can be. But if that were the only source of my revenue, it just couldn't work anymore. It worked for Don and Terry for 30-some years because they did everything that I can't by myself. And you still have the people who come in, oh, I love bookstores, I'm so glad you know this.
I do. I could spend hours in here, and I'll come back when I have more time.
Yeah, or I'll buy this. Okay, $5. Yeah. So there's that. So I'm a little ambivalent. I've said to people, if I had started out without an open shop, I don't think I would have gone on to open one. If I could have leveraged my entry in other ways. But I'm keeping it open for the foreseeable future. I see them closing all around, but Kevin's committed.
Yeah.
And
Kevin also has regular shop hours.
He does.
Yeah, that's extraordinary.
And he has a lot more staff than I do too. He has 5 or 6 people.
Really? Wow.
But we're there, and I think the Baltimore area is doing better than the DC area in terms of open shops. I mean, Bartleby's just closed, and I can only go by what's still open, like Second Story and a couple of others.
How many stores does Second Story have?
They only have 1 plus their warehouse now. They used to have up to 3.
Oh, I have.
Yeah.
You know the name Bill Hale?
I don't.
William F. Hale. He used to have an open shop in D.C. I think he sort of vanished into the ether.
Yeah.
Very good.
I think I know he was. There was a period in the 80s, maybe, where there were a lot of active people who would open up little businesses, and they seemed to do okay for.
Of course, Larry McMurtry booked up. It was in D.C. too.
Yeah, that was famous. But then he opened up his book town, and I don't think that's there anymore.
No, it's long gone. It's in Archer City, Texas.
Of all places. I guess if Hay-on-Wye can do it, why can't Archer City?
I don't know. I haven't been to Archer City, but I've seen pictures of it. I can't imagine living there.
Much less going there. Anyway. So, as far as open shops, I think that I don't think there'll ever be a lot more, but I hope those of us who do it can hang on.
What I'm thinking in terms is the one-on-one contact of the bookseller with the buyer, be it a collector, librarian, or even another dealer. In light of that, how does the book fair, what kind of relationship does that have to your trade?
That's been very important. And I think probably everyone says so in terms of that one-on-one. I mean, at this fair, I can't say I did terrifically with sales, but I met an institutional librarian that I already can tell is going to be, she wants to buy a Kelmscott Press book, and, it's going to be a good relationship. And that's worth it. And it wouldn't have happened else.
You could have sent out emails and letters,
catalogues,
even catalogs. Who knows?
So I think fairs are, outside of a shop, fairs are unique in that respect.
There's probably no better way to sell a really fine book than to be right there with you, the buyer, and the book.
It's a wonderful book.
That's right. What else have we missed?
I think we've pretty much talked about all the things we were going to. About the future of the book trade in general and books. I don't fear Kindles and all of that. I really don't.
That's the example of what I was talking about. Anytime anything changes, it's this is the end of life as we
exactly.
know it.
That's what you were. And now this is the latest, and it's like, I have nothing against Kindles per se, and one of I'll never forget John Windle. I don't know if you've talked to him yet, who adores them.
Yes, he does.
And he's like, let me show you this. Good old fashioned. It's fine. I don't personally have any interest in having one, but
I don't either. In fact, one of the sons, one of Joaquin Cook's little funny son.
Is that little Christopher?
Yeah. Mr. Bowtie. He looked at my cell phone. He said, that's an old phone. I know. It still works.
It works.
It works for me. I have no fascination with the technical devices.
No, they're there surely to get stuff done. But no, I think I don't worry about the fate of the book. I also think it's changed. Look at institutional libraries who are now moving more into, with all the online digitalization of, scholarly books. They're looking to do other things with their funds, including artist books and ephemera and.
Again, it gets back to not as a source of information per se. You saw this in your law library experiences. Probably more and more of that material became available on your computer rather than off the shelf.
Absolutely.
Which is fine, but the source material, the first printings, the objects of beauty, they're never going to be able to put that on a computer, are they?
If they can, it's still not the same.
No, it certainly wouldn't be. It wouldn't be.
So that's, but I think that's where I see things going and staying.
Well, I appreciate you sitting down and having a chat with us. I think you and I are very much on the same page as far as the future of the trade and where we're going, away from my old shop motto I used to have, is you can't judge a book by its contents. And looking at some of the beautiful things that you have at the fair here, I almost don't care what's inside of them. I know it's a nice book. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fran.
Thank you for
sitting
asking
down.
me.
My pleasure. Very nice. Thanks again.
Thanks.